The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 22. Westview. I once again found the mists turning me away from closed borders, but this time I knew to expect it. My patron had informed me that Westview's borders open rarely. Because the tiny domain is currently located within the borders of Darkon, I traveled there instead, making my way to what should have been a bucolic hamlet in the Vukar River Valley. Had I not known precisely where I was going and what I was looking for, I would have gone past Westview without a moment's thought. From the outside, the town appeared empty, not overgrown or neglected, but as though all of its residents had chosen to leave an hour before. This should have been remarkable enough to draw my attention, but I found my eyes skating past the town as though it were entirely uninteresting, drawn to something, anything else. When I was finally able to focus on Westview and attempt entry, I found that its protections were twofold. Not only did an invisible barrier repel me, as though the entire village were protected by a massive wall of force, but on a bone-deep level, I did not want to enter Westview. Stepping toward it felt like stepping toward a rampaging inferno, all my instincts screaming for me to flee. After several days of encamping on the outskirts of the village, I saw the borders shimmer like a heat wave, and I suspected my time had come. I swallowed my apprehension and pushed into Westview. Immediately, what had appeared from the outside to be an empty town was teeming with laughing, genial villagers. But this was an even greater illusion than that of the vacant streets. There is no true laughter in Westview, and one could argue that only one villager truly lives there.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
And we're discussing how to convert Disney movies to Ravenloft Domains of Dread, because if Wreck-It Ralph 2 can have Marvel stuff, so can we.
Along the way, we'll look at the Darklord, the domain itself, and some plot hooks and adaptation ideas to integrate the setting into your own campaign.
Today's episode, WandaVision.
WandaVision.
Which is not a Disney animated movie.
No.
Or a movie of any kind.
Or animated.
Other
than a couple of the intro sequences.
And yes, and not, it's just about that. That's the whole domain.
Yeah.
And not in the classical sense Disney.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned last episode we are starting a new feature this month for the month of May, and as if you've been following us, I hope you know we're both huge fans of alliteration.
Yes, we are.
So we are starting a feature we are calling Marvel May.
Mm-hmm.
That is, from this point for the next foreseeable future going forward, May is going to be our month to do something off of our normal mainline Disney animated film field of study, and specifically to dive into some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's still under the umbrella of Disney, but it's nice to be able to get in some of those things in.
Because there are some great Darklords in Marvel.
Yes,
and
indeed.
If you were hearing that we're doing this in May, and you know anything at all about Tom, you might have been all excited and thinking that it was going to be some kind of May the 4th thing.
Right.
Unfortunately, Star Wars doesn't go with Ravenloft.
It does not go very well at all.
Believe me, if it did, Tom would find a way.
Maybe, let me think.
See, Darth Vader,
yeah.
He's got the Act of Ultimate Darkness, he definitely has the Torment, he definitely has the Tragedy and Relatability, but it's not a domain.
No.
It's not like this is, it's not like Darth Vader is like the supreme
but he's
chancellor.
He is not the kind of keystone that the whole thing's built around.
Yeah, that
He's
would be
not
Luke.
the whole radiating it out from, Anyway.
Anyway.
In the future, hit us up on Patreon or Discord if you want us to do a bonus episode explaining why Star Wars would or would not make a good domain and our thoughts on him.
And believe me, you'll be hearing my thoughts on Grand Admiral Thrawn.
So, the real reason, we've got a couple of options for Marvel May. We have a couple episodes potentially, but this is the one that inspired it. This is the thing. As soon as we were working on this podcast, we were like, oh man, we have to do WandaVision.
Have to do WandaVision. She closes the border. She is a Darklord. She has a reality bubble that she rules in her image that radiates out from her. Yeah, like if you played Mage the Ascension, the only thing she's more of than a Darklord is a Marauder. Yes. But, that's not our podcast. We can make her Darklord. This is not Wonderful World of Mage the Ascension, sadly. Wonderful World of Darkness. Wonderful World of Darkness. Hit us up on Patreon if you want us to do Wonderful World of Darkness. It's not implausible. Mm-mm. That could happen. So, anyway. Wanda Maximoff, our Darklord, a fantastic Darklord, one of the finest examples of a Darklord we've seen in pop culture entertainment. Yes. You might not be down surprised to tell you that this whole domain is built around that person of the Darklord. And we're going to talk more about that in a section we like to call The Lord. The Lord. I am deeply reluctant to describe precisely what happened to me when I entered Westview, and how I learned all that I did. Rest assured that I shall describe my experiences in due time, but for now, I will present only the facts themselves. I have heard Outlanders describe lands beyond the mists that sound impossibly idyllic, where people can live their entire lives without encountering hags, lycanthropes, the undead, or any other such monstrosities. Westview seemed on the surface to be such a place, with no one having any greater concern than preparing for the upcoming Solstice Festival, an occasion marked with music, dancing, and an extraordinary amount of cake, not with the more colorful rituals of lands such as Tempest. This seeming perfection, however, is a puppet show, with one of Westview's laughing, genial villagers pulling the strings. Wanda Maximoff, a spellcaster who arrived with her warforged husband Vision some unspecified time ago. Some past trauma inflicted Maximoff with a level of grief that should be debilitating. Rather than allow herself to experience it, the witch divides it among the people of Westview, forcing them, to carry it for her. Her control goes beyond that, however, for every person in Westview, with a single exception, is under her control, creating the illusion of an idealized village for her amusement. I suspect Maximoff may have lost her home in some kind of disaster, and is using powerful magic to create a flat, romanticized version of it where she can hide from her overwhelming grief. This is an understandable impulse, or would be if she did not force innocent people to act in the roles of the dead friends she remembers. The one flaw in this theory is Vision. Given the level of autonomy he displays, I do not believe that this Vision is some hapless warforged bystander who is conscripted into Maximoff's fantasy. I thought at first that he was Maximoff's actual husband, perhaps charmed to prevent him from pushing against her rule. By the time I escaped Westview, I had discarded this theory. I have no doubt that the true Vision is dead. Nonetheless, this replacement is able to play the part with far more freedom than the rest of us were given.
Thesis statement. Wanda Maximoff, as seen in WandaVision, the Scarlet Witch, is a perfect darklord.
Yes, she is.
And so now we're going to argue that by going through the 4 qualities that we consider things that make a good darklord. But you know who Wanda Maximoff is, but Rachel, what is a darklord?
Well, a darklord is an evil being who commits some kind of act of ultimate darkness that causes the dark powers to say, why, hello, new friend, we want to play with you forever. And so they pluck that being up and they place them in a domain which is a special hell tailor-made just for them. Mm-hmm. There are great darklords. There are tristesses. But she relates.
Yeah.
So we have 4 qualities, as Tom stepped on my toes by saying, that separate the Strahd von Zarovich from the Tristesses. So we're going to go through those 4 qualities one by one and talk about how they apply to Strahd von Zarovich, the Darklord, and then we barely are going to even need to describe how they apply to Wanda Maximoff.
Just listen to that, and if you've seen WandaVision, be like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So the first quality is that act of ultimate darkness. They don't just kind of become a Dark Lord through attrition of a whole bunch of little evil things, unless they're Uruk von Karkov. They do one really bad thing that draws the dark power's attention. And in Strahd's case, it was that he killed his brother because he wanted to get with his brother's fiancée. In Tristessa's case, it was because she killed a bunch of people to avenge the fact that they horribly murdered her and her tiny, tiny baby. So, you know.
That's bad?
Yeah.
Darkness? Ultimate?
Darkness?
2 question marks there.
The second element of a good Darklord is what they call in Van Rifkin's Guide to Ravenloft the Torment, because for a Disney podcast we call it they got what they wanted, they lost what they had. And in Strahd's case, it's congratulations, Sergei's out of the way, you have eternal youth, so you're no longer too old for Tatiana, but you're too Strahd for Tatiana, and you always will be, and she's never going to be into you. Our third element is an element of tragedy or relatability. They aren't just evil for the sake of being evil. There's something about them that makes us say, man, you had to kill the love of your life in order to save him from Thanos, and then he got brought back to life and killed by Thanos anyway. That sucks.
Oof, wow. Wow.
In Strahd's case, it wasn't that. It's that unrequited love is just the worst.
That'd be a heck of a thing.
It would be, wouldn't it? I can't imagine who would go through something like that. And then our final element is that the domain reflects the Dark Lord and their curse in some way. Strahd is the Dark Lord of creepy vampire land. He is not the Dark Lord of 50s suburbia sitcom land. And although that would be quite a thing. Wow.
I'm sure there have been so many fan hacks of Curse of Strahd. I am sure there's waiting for you to finish your drink, Strahd, the Homeowners Association president of Barovia suburb, Baroviaville.
Yes.
Barovia. Thought somebody's done Strahd in a sweater, with a pipe.
Ozzy Strahd in his sweater
being a 50s dad.
But that is not the default. The
No.
default is spooky vampire land. And it doesn't just reflect him being a spooky vampire, it also reflects his curse of being alone, of not having Tayana with him, because Barovia is this boring mud slump full of boring people, so he's always going to be bored and lonely.
So those qualities that we think are what define a good Dark Lord, and once again, I imagine, I'm kind of redundant here, as you were listening to Rachel describe those 4 qualities, you were like, check. Yep, one has all those things. You've seen WandaVision, which I hope you have, otherwise this can have a lot of spoilers. You should watch it, it's great.
Yeah, it's great.
So, just for the sake of completeness, and just in case you didn't, we start with the act of ultimate darkness, and this is also getting into some of our kind of backstory, and we're just, once again, taking the exact thing from the show and slapping some Dungeons & Dragons paint on top.
Yep, some Scarlet Dungeons & Dragons paint.
So you're imagining they were adventurers, they're part of this very, very, very high-level adventuring team, fighting this, big boss kind of climax of the campaign kind of thing, and she was a sorceress, because you get that kind of inherent magic in her blood. Her husband was a warforged, so Vision was a warforged, she was a fighter.
Closest thing we have to a synthezoid in D&D.
Yeah. And in the battle, he died. And that's all right. She brought his body back to, when we were cutting out all the backstory with the government and everything, but she brought his body back to the village. They found this village, this peaceful village called Westview. They'd fallen in love with it. He'd bought a plot of land, their plan was to retire there, and he bought a plot of land for them to build a home, and when she went to bury him, just the grief hit her. She went mad. Her chaos, wild magic of her sorcery powers just sort of bloomed into full god level, and she created this reality bubble, including, and this is where the Ultimate Darkness comes in, mind enslaving the entire population of the village. Just taking them over and making them her puppets.
Yeah. To justify that level of power, to kind of be going along with the whole Milestone thing. If you wanted it to be at some point in their adventure, she, ran into the something or other of Vecna. There's a whole lot of ways you can justify if she's a 20th level sorcerer, that she's God mode even for a 20th level sorcerer in all those years of adventuring.
I was even thinking the justification just now could be that, as part of the loot from the boss battle, got, a scroll of wish. And cast wish, because wish could do that.
And then especially once she gets sucked into Ravenloft, the dark powers can perpetuate it for the curse. So
exactly.
That's a great thing. You don't have to be able to mechanically explain all this when you've got dark power torment.
Yes, you do. So she has got this bubble reality she's created, or domain, quote unquote, if you will.
And special hell tailor-made just for her.
She can have domestic bliss. Vision is alive there. There's no violence. There's no conflict. There's no aggressive conflict. There's no adventuring. It's just her and her husband having the kind of domestic bliss they dreamed of retiring to.
It's shenanigans.
With shenanigans. Which mean, problems, but silly, not scary. And we're going to get into a little bit with the shenanigans later. There's a reason there's shenanigans. That's actually really important.
Yes.
Then we have the torment. She got what she wanted, but she lost what she had. And we see this in WandaVision,
yes!
Right? It's right there. She has what she wants. She has this reality. She has this perfect domestic peace where all that's ever going to happen is shenanigans. Every conflict is very low stakes and is going to be resolved in 22 minutes. And it's going to end with them happy on the couch together.
Yeah.
Closing out the night. She has this paradise of domestic peace, but there's a couple moments of the torment here. Part of her knows it's fake. There is that some level, part of her kind of conscious brain is usually just in this illusion. But her kind of whole subconscious mind is devoted to running it. Her subconscious mind is kind of the computer running this simulation. And so there is that part of her knows it's fake. Also, there are flaws in the system. That stuff goes wrong, there are glitches, there are things that don't make sense. There'll always be these cracks in the mirror, there'll always be these flaws in the illusion, and she'll always kind of notice them.
Yeah.
So there'll always be that sort of itch in her brain. She cannot stop herself from, on some level, knowing what's going on some level being aware of what she's doing.
Yeah. There'll always be Dottie cutting her hand, or the people on the outskirts of the village at Halloween just kind of being in screensaver mode.
Yeah. And this brings us to Chef's Kiss, the heart of the torment, the just bravo dark powers. Slow clap for you on this one. Vision is too well made. She made a copy of Vision, but she made a copy of this good man, this hero that she fought with, who believed in protecting the innocent and helping the helpless, and he is too well made. He notices things. He always notices things are going wrong.
Yeah.
He always figures out something's wrong here and the people are suffering, and he always fights against it. So this is where we take a very dark turn.
Yeah.
Hand it over to Rachel for this
WandaVision
dark
isn't
turn.
dark enough. Yeah.
Not nearly enough.
Yeah. So, because we want to make Wanda more, multiverse of madness Wanda than WandaVision Wanda, because even in WandaVision you got the sense that she was trying her best, and in the end she did let go of Westview.
Yes.
Like she wasn't in full darklord mode.
Yes, and that is not going to do for our purposes.
No, and especially if we really want to turn this into a horror setting where she's just the worst.
Yep.
So, Vision, he's realizing things are wrong. He's fighting against it. Wanda is either having to, wipe his memory and just turn him into her happy little drone husband again until he starts waking up to the fact that things are wrong, and then she wipes his memory again. And then, eventually, she says, okay, there's something wrong with this Vision, I need to try again. And she kills him.
Yeah.
And brings back another one.
And starts over.
And so, you could have either it's the same body she's resurrecting over and over and over again, or that somewhere there's just a scrap heap full of dead Visions.
Yeah. Like, with the illusion fades enough, you just see a big pit full of dead Visions.
And you could absolutely do, she got tired of wiping his mind over and over again, and so there are a couple times where she says, you know what, I'm just going to have him be a robot like everyone else, and those are the ones she kills the fastest.
Yeah.
Because it's not right.
That's not true. It's so beautiful. She's doing this to have this domestic life with her husband, but maintaining it involves killing her husband over and over and over again, and, trapping him in a hell with her.
Yeah.
And just, it's so delicious.
So delicious and awful.
For those listening at home, Rachel just jumped on the script outline we're doing, scrolled down to the incorporating the old material, wrote the word Vorlogs, and then scrolled back up to where we left off.
But the Grognards are like, yeah!
Yeah, Vorlogs.
Everybody else, you'll see when we get there.
I believe they were in Babylon 5. So, our third element, and this is going right off that, but this is what you're feeling right now in our description of her situation, that element of tragedy and relatability. That she's tragic and relatable. And this is one of the reasons this show works so well, is we do see her do monstrous things. We do come to realize she is the bad guy of the show, but grief is such an empathetic motivation. Just no one in the world can fault her. She lost her husband. She's basically sacrificed her husband to save the world, but she's alone, he's gone, and she just cannot process. She cannot accept the grief.
I mean, Monica Rambeau even says, if it were me, then I might have done the same thing for my mom. It's grief is bad. And
grief is terrible, and escapism is that universal impulse. Like you were saying with Monica Rambeau, all of us can think of situations where we would want to just slip into this happy bubble reality. And that's even part of the genius of this show is the meta commentary on sitcoms. That's what sitcoms are.
Yeah.
Sitcoms are these warm little bubble baths that we can just slip into this escapist world where everything's fine, everyone's going to be happy, everyone's going to get a happy ending. It's just shenanigans. The part of the reason the show worked so well is that element of tragedy and relatability. Then, of course, we have the domain reflects the darklord personality or curse. And once again, we have to explain this sometimes, but...
This is one, I think this might be our most obvious domain reflects the darklord and the personality/curse that we have ever had in any episode.
Yes. This is literally her fantasy. Like, more than any other domain I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. This is her world.
Yes.
This is not just that she's ruling it, not just that she can control people. It's that, once again, her brain is the computer running the simulation. Mm-hmm. Her brain is the one deciding what everyone is saying and everyone is doing and everything that's happening. And a lot of it's her subconscious mind, but she is just telling herself a story.
Yeah.
And everyone is just a character or a prop in that story. And she's constructed this perfect world to hide in, but it's looping back to that tragedy and relatability, but you can't hide in it.
Yeah, that's also how it's reflecting her curse.
Yes.
Is that it's like, if this were real, that it would be perfect, but it's not. And there's a constant itch in her brain that this isn't real, and she knows it isn't real, and she knows eventually she's gonna have to kill Vision again.
And this is like the, you're too strong for Tatiana. It's like, you're the problem.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. She's the problem. Like, she's built this perfect world, but she's the imperfection. She's the problem. She's bringing in the violence and the darkness and all the things she built this world to hold out. She brought them into that world.
It'll always be broken. Just like
you. That's so good. So, with that pitch, with that spin, how could we not come up with a whole new thing?
Yeah.
A whole new sub-series to justify doing a WandaVision.
It's like, yes, Thanos, the high evolutionary Wanda.
We'll get you, Wanda. In terms of Wanda, in terms of power and dominion, this one's tricky because...
She's a god?
She's a god, basically.
That's her power. And, not a god in the sense that Hades is a god, right. Or, even we made Elsa a god, basically. No, she's, omniscient and omnipotent.
Yeah, she literally is controlling this reality. With some very important exceptions. Mm-hmm. With Wanda, for the basic stats, we're using Archmage because, once again, the idea is she's an unimaginably powerful spellcaster. Mm-hmm. That if the PC's having a boss fight with her, they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And power, she's a more or less god. At any given moment, she has almost absolute control over this reality and the people in it. They follow her script. They just kind of do the lines she asks, she does, and even if she's not full on dictating every single line, she's kind of created their personality and their intentions and their goals. The PCs are not going to do that. Once we don't want to deal with that because
that's no fun.
It's never fun to be mind controlled as a PC. When you have an excuse of they weren't there when she made it, right? They came in later to the bubble reality, like Monica Rambeau, but they're not going to get Monica Rambeau.
And you could have, because we're jumping ahead to plot hooks and why did you come, you can have the rescue mission where you're going in to save Monica Rambeau, but you can have it be that you have to be there a certain amount of time before it kicks in. Everybody who lived in Westview originally, they got hit right away, but if you're going into Westview from the outside, you have a couple weeks before you get totally mind whammied. I
said you don't want to be mind controlled. There's a couple exceptions. If you're really intense roleplay drama-y, it could be fun to have a scene or two. Mm-hmm. They were calling the Okie Dokie Neighbors scenes. It could be fun to have just a scene where you tell one of the PCs you are a goofy sitcom dad.
Yeah.
Talk like you're a goofy sitcom dad. And this is not a thing for even a whole session, one scene. Mm-hmm. And then it could be, everybody make a wisdom save. Okay, now you're a goofy sitcom dad. Now you're a nosy neighbor. And then the great thing is, you don't have to make it dependent on a wisdom save because you've got Vision to go in and shield them.
Yeah.
We see that in the show.
Yeah.
So perfect. Vision there, I'm a sitcom dad. And Vision comes in, touches their head. Okay, now you're back to yourself again. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to worry about it anymore. Vision's going to leave you shielded. And the great thing here is then that's a natural alliance with Vision.
Yeah.
That Vision has come in and you're immediately going to be okay, this is our guy. This is our most important NPC, our buddy. And it even makes sense that if they're not initially in this bubble, Vision will be reaching out to them. Because he's suspecting things are wrong. Mm-hmm. He's noticing things are wrong. And here come these heavily armed transients who are also noticing things are wrong.
Yeah.
It writes itself.
It writes itself.
Now, we said she was God with a very important asterisk, which is there are cracks in the facade.
Yes.
And this is something we see in the show. She is, and it's even, the great thing is the dark powers are helping you here because I use the analogy when we're talking about this of she's juggling 10 plates and the dark powers tackling and throwing more plates in. Because they want to watch her drop them. That's the fun. And then she'll pick them up and she'll get 10 new plates and start juggling them again. They get to do the whole thing all over again. So we see this in the show. There are limits to her control. So that, like, there's obviously the cracks in the facade, but even, like, Halloween's really important for this. You know, she's kind of overwhelmed because Halloween is bigger than most of the things we've seen. It's a lot more people, a lot more stuff happening. She's, you know, a lot more of her, like, processing is being maintained.
She's bringing out kids for the first time.
Right, bringing kids for the first time.
She's dealing with the emotional stress of fake Pietro's just showing up. And she's having a fight with Vision.
Yeah, she's having a fight with Vision. And Vision tells her he's going to be somewhere. And then he goes to, like, the outskirts of town where she doesn't know he is. And he gets to the outskirts of town, and it's just screensaver mode.
It's so creepy.
It's so creepy. And just that's the thing, that he was able to start breaking through the illusion because she was kind of, her mental processor was kind of being stretched to the breaking point. So the sort of edges of the map were starting to crack.
Yeah.
And that's really useful for your PCs. Because it means there's a logic to her power. And this is exactly the kind of thing PCs are very good at figuring out. Like, oh, if we spread out. Oh, if we make her be running full processing at every point in town, it'll start weakening her.
Yeah, we don't have, like, specific rules for this.
Right.
Because a lot of this is going to be running off of PC creativity, running off of what ideas they come up with. Like, how can they distract her? How can they stress her out to the point that
exactly,
she's, you know, playing the player instead of the game?
If you want to have a kind of mechanic, it could be if she takes a level of exhaustion. Then, or something with the wild magic surge, you could use that for her losing control. The equivalent of, like, all the crazy, like, the stork painting comes to life and all the crazy weather. But yeah, just what are the PCs going to come up with that overwhelms her, that makes her lose control, and when they do that, they can start breaking through her spell.
Yeah.
Like, they can start waking up the neighbors, they can start, you know, overwhelming her, they can start, like, challenging her mastery of the reality, and once again, in my experience, PCs are very good at figuring out this kind of thing. I mean, that's all the power she got, right? We don't need to give her, like, a big list of powers or a spell list or anything. She's omnipotent.
The hardest part was coming up with the limits.
Yes, yes, because otherwise you're just in trouble.
Yeah. Like, even when we were working on this outline for powers, Tom put in basically God. I was like, okay, but then what?
Right, yeah. How do the PCs fight God? Which is what they were doing in this scenario.
And why does God need a starship?
Exactly. Why does God need
a sitcom?
A sitcom. Why does God need a suburban house? Then we do have closing the borders. That is the power pretty much all Darklords have, with a few exceptions we've come up with. And this is kind of fitting that thing, too. Because we see the borders. We see her closing the borders.
Yes!
She makes a big shield and no one can go in. And that you, even before that, have this whole, like, there's the line Jimmy has about, like, it doesn't want us in. Like, it takes a wisdom save to go in even when the borders are open. And this was kind of the challenge of Wanda had this power. She would just have all the borders closed all the time.
Yes.
Because that's what she wants. She wants a bubble. And there's nothing in the outside world she wants. She wants this completely cordoned off.
There's a statement that I have to that effect that we're going to get to.
Yeah. But we can't have that happen because the PCs can't come in unless some really weird shenanigans happen. So we're imagining as a reflection, once again, kind of the torment, kind of another manifestation of that whole, she can't keep all the plates in the air, that when she's overwhelmed, the borders open. And so it could be that, like, they come in right as she's, like, rebooting, right as she's starting a new cycle. Right as we're back to episode 1 of WandaVision. The PCs are, like, coming in at that moment.
That's a good place to come in, because that way they're the instigators of chaos.
Exactly.
So.
Or the other could be, if you wanted to get them in, like, at a different point in the story, it could even be that, like, when she sleeps.
Yeah.
That when she sleeps, the borders open and no one goes because she's programmed them not to. Maybe the whole town freezes when she sleeps for the most part, but...
Yeah, or maybe they just continue going on their programming, but she can't do that and have the borders closed.
Yeah. So when she sleeps, the borders open, and so that's an option too. If you want to, you could bring in the PCs, whatever, in that option. And one other exception we're imagining is that Vision can go through. Because once again, that's sort of symbolic, her lack of control. Like, she can't control him, she can't manipulate him the way she can everyone else. So
He says so at the end of the Full House episode.
Even when she has the borders closed, Vision can go through. And that, once again, could be really useful for your PCs. He's getting them out. Then you even get that wonderful, like, he starts falling apart, he starts dying if he crosses the borders. Like, he can only be living in this bubble, in this domain.
And then she's going to be so mad.
Yeah. Or even it's going to be like, that could be the clue. If I haven't seen WandaVision, or they're really good role players, then that could be one of the big clues maybe that this is why she did it. That, like, when he leaves her bubble, you see him dead. Like, you see him torn apart.
Yeah.
And then you push him back. He gets pulled back in, and he's alive again. And that's the big clue that, oh, this is why she made this bubble for the PCs.
Yeah.
So the last thing we like to do, in the style of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, the domain write-ups there, they always have our role-playing trait ideal bond flaw for the Darklords, and we are doing a write-up on DM's Guild of this domain in that style, so we're going to have our role-playing trait ideal bond and flaw for Wanda. But those are always quotes, so we like to do them as quotes as well. So,
yes.
Rachel, you have got some quotes prepared as potential role-playing trait ideal bond and flaw for our very tragic, very messed up,
very awful
Darklord. Oh, the best kind of Darklord, right?
Best kind, yes.
Tragic, messed up, awful.
So yeah, this was tricky because, you know, it's so much of the show she's spending in, you know, making breakfast for dinner.
Sure, yeah.
Also, you know, again, in this version, we're not really doing this stuff with her kids, and she has a lot of great quotes involving the kids, so again, none of those were in. I did get a couple of quotes from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, because again, that's when we see her in full Darklord mode. I figured that, and, you know, she has the similar torment and everything. I figured that we're not cheating. But that doesn't have the amazing line, "I'm not a monster, I'm a mother," which is, you know, we sadly can't bring that in here.
We'll touch on the kids in a little bit.
Yeah. And also, you know, again, going back to how she can't control Vision like she can the rest of them. Sadly, the absolute best flaw line makes no sense out of context, which is, "Can't I?"
It's so good.
But, other than "Can't I?" and "I'm not a monster, I'm a mother," I did find some good quotes.
Yay!
All right, I'm going to start with the Doctor Strange ones.
Sure.
"You have exhausted my patience, but I do hope you understand that even now, what's about to happen, this is me being reasonable."
That's a good one.
Yeah. "I'd never hurt you. I'd never hurt anyone. I'm not a monster." And then here are the WandaVision ones. "Look, we've all been there, right? Letting our fear and anger get the best of us, intentionally expanding the borders of the false worlds we created. Oh, don't worry, darling. I have everything under control."
That's gotta be in there. That's gotta be in there. "Don't worry, darling, I have everything under control."
And then this, if we want to do something kind of nice for the bond or the ideal, we're gonna have to ... it because it has a reference to the Mind Stone.
Sure.
But "You, Vision, are the piece of the Mind Stone that lives in me. You're a body of wires and blood and bone that I created. You're my sadness and my hope, but mostly you're my love."
That's really good.
Yeah. Similarly, if we want to do something nice for the ideal or bond, "You know, a family is forever. We could never truly leave each other, even if we tried."
Ooh, no, let's do that for Bart. I'm calling it right now
good.
because I'm typing. That's what you're hearing.
It's nice, but also awful.
But also creepy. Yes, a family is forever. I could not leave you if I tried.
Although that might be ideal because I'm about to throw a bond possibility in
okay.
here. "I have what I want, and no one will ever take it from me."
Heck yeah.
Yeah, that was when, you know, when she goes out and the sword agents are all lined up there and they're telling her to let the people of Westview out. They say, "What do you want?" And she says, "I have what I want, and no one will ever."
That
take
is
it from
so
me again."
perfect for the bond.
Yes.
I have what I want, and no one will ever take it from me again.
Yeah.
Because that's the PCs. They could be the ones being like, "We want to help you. What do you want?"
Yeah.
And her response is going to be, "I have what I want, and no one will ever take it from me again."
Yeah. And then this involves, like, Vision has a question that I'm having to incorporate into her quote here. "All of this is for us, so let me handle it. You don't want to know what's outside Westview, I promise you."
Ooh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And then this is kind of similar to the "This is me being reasonable," but it's from WandaVision. "This will be your only warning. Stay out of my home. You don't bother me, I won't bother you."
I think it's got to be the role-playing trait. Because that will be... That will be her... Because I think we have kind of the sword agents. We're going to this later.
Yeah.
To kind of be the PCs. And how much she acts toward them is how she's going to act toward the PCs. And that's, once again, her reaction to that.
Yeah.
So only warning, stay out of my home. Because that's going to be her first. She's not going to go violence right away. It's going to be, stay out of my home. You don't bother me. I won't bother you.
I feel like I have a very strong feeling about which of these is the flaw with all of those gone, but I'm curious what you think.
Okay.
There's some great options. But I feel like
it's
this is
killing
one.
me. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Don't Worry, Darling, I have everything under control.
Yeah. That was the one. I love I'd never hurt you, I'd never hurt anyone, I'm not a monster, because so much of her flaw revolves around the denial.
Yes.
But you have to explain it. Like, if it's just the flaw appearing in the write-up,
yes.
then it's like, oh, okay, she never hurt anyone, that's a flaw, so.
And I love the, like, let me handle it. You don't want to know outside of Westview, I promise you. But that is at the point, like, we're kind of letting go some of the denial. Where it's such a statement, don't worry, darling, I have everything under control, is like so the dismissing his concerns, and also even that's the flaw.
Yeah, that she has everything under control.
Yeah, that she thinks, she believes she has everything under control.
And that she wants to have everything under control, even these human beings in their free will.
Yeah, exactly. It's too perfect. Don't worry, darling, I have everything under control.
Just, oh man, I'm really impressed with this, because that was a murderer's row of Wanda
so
quotes,
good,
but that's, but they were obvious, what can I say?
Yeah, this is good stuff. So, we have talked a lot in abstract about her creating a reality bubble, and we've talked about why she did it, and kind of the fun of the heart of that is to have her husband back, and have this sort of sitcom-esque domestic bliss. But obviously it's not going to be a sitcom, because that's not a thing in Dungeons & Dragons.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the reality bubble she created. We talked about PCs coming into it, what they might encounter, experience when they come into that reality bubble, in this section we like to call
The Land. The Land. The village of Westview is named for the breathtaking panorama of the mountains to the west. As my patron is no doubt aware, however, there are no mountains to the west of the Vukar River Valley. Just as she has reshaped the people to suit her fancies, Maximoff has reshaped the view to reflect the home she remembers or desires. Within the village, the people are consumed by the most domestic and frivolous of tasks. After the Solstice Festival came the Sunflower Parade, the town follies, a surprise inspection of all local businesses, and a host of minor interpersonal dealings. All of these events were plagued by 1,000 trivial complications, and when they were resolved painlessly, my body would laugh and embrace a stranger over a job well done, as though we had known each other for years. Indeed, more than once I heard myself claim that we had. It seems that Maximoff enjoys a measure of excitement and conflict in her life, but not enough to allow it to have any lasting impact on her little pantomime.
So this brings us to the aforementioned reality bubble, whose details we've just been aching to share with you, because this is probably the big question I'm imagining you are having right now. It was the big question
that we had when we were trying to figure out how to do this to me.
We are exactly in the position you are now, which is like, yes, Wanda, amazing. Amazing Darklord, perfect Darklord. Has a reality bubble. But how do you do a Ravenloft domain that's a WandaVision story?
Yeah, what's the Ravenloft version of a sitcom?
Yes. So, we have the village of Westview. It is a perfect, happy, fantasy village. Everyone's jolly and rosy-cheeked. Everyone has very simple, flat personalities and motivations. They're basically, NPCs in a video game. Or like just most of the people are very hastily sketched NPCs the GM just pulled out of their butt.
Yeah. This is Treebeard. He's a tree with a beard.
There are a lot of festivals, for reasons we'll circle back to in a moment, but there's always a festival going on. And the nice thing is here, there's a lot of practical questions PCs might ask, and you might be wanting to ask us. But the point is there's deliberately no answer. So, like, where's the government? What are the laws? Where does the food come from? Like, there's food at the inn, but where does it come from? Like, no, the point is there's no answer to those questions.
Yeah.
Because the point is, this is a genre of story that doesn't care about those questions.
Yes.
And then we're going to be zooming in and spending a lot of time talking about one particular place in the village of Westview, one almost like central axis mundi, like the center around which this whole world revolves, and that is, Rachel?
The Scarlet Witch Coffee Shop.
Okay. Yes.
Our original thought, we were like, as we're saying all this stuff, that was all, like, from the beginning. We're like, okay, yeah, like very flat NPCs, like, generico happy fantasy village.
Right.
But we were thinking about, like, maybe it's like kind of your starting village where you go,
Right.
starting time where you go do dungeon dives and everything. But even that, like, specter of violence.
Yes.
It felt like too much for the kind of, like, fantasy that Wanda is escaping into.
We had this idea of this is deliberately flat, two-dimensional, like, D&D setting. But we were like, okay, I guess. Like, it didn't click. It wasn't exactly right. Then Rachel nailed it.
Yes, I thought of it, like, as I was falling asleep, and I could hear Tom was already asleep, and I almost woke him up, because I had just finished reading Legends and Locked.
Yes.
And I realized that what we wanted was a cozy fantasy.
A cozy fantasy. So Wanda and Vision, they've hung up their adventuring capes, and they've put on the aprons of baristas, and they own a coffee shop.
Yes, and that was their dream. That was what they were going to do when they stopped adventuring. And so it is the dream that Wanda has trapped herself in, like a fugue state.
Yes.
This entire time.
Oh, it's so perfect.
And that's the whole, that gives us, with the, when they were talking about sitcoms, the shenanigans.
Shenanigans, exactly.
And that it's, funny instead of scary.
Right.
And there's always happy. And that's what cozy fantasy is.
Yes.
Cozy fantasy is shenanigans.
And this is the thing. This is the problem why the original plan didn't really work, because it wasn't shenanigans.
Yes.
Because any kind of, like, dungeon dive, even if it's, like, the easiest, poke a goblin and they die and cough up 1,000,000 gold and a +1 magic sword, like, and boots of speed and everything, like, that's not shenanigans.
Yeah. It's like there's something there, but it's not WandaVision.
Yes.
Like, you could absolutely do something where someone goes mad and has, like, this Wanda-style break, and that's kind of like their power fantasy is that all they do is, poke goblins and they explode. But that's not WandaVision.
Yes. Because WandaVision it's that escapism of sitcom, and this is the perfect medium to do a D&D sitcom, is the Legends and Latte style cozy fantasy. Because if you're not familiar with cozy fantasy, you probably have figured out.
Yeah.
It is, a lot of it is set in a very, at least Legends and Lattes, and I think there's others, in a very D&D style world. But it is almost a juxtaposition of this world associated with these, like, higher stakes, more violent fantasy, with the much more, like, domestic bliss, lower stakes, like, you're just sort of enjoying nice people having a nice time.
It's like if, like me, your favorite part of Name of the Wind is watching Kavoth play in bars and try to pay off his student loan debt. But that, even though that's not these big world-shattering stakes, you're still glued to the page wondering who's going to pay off his student loan debts. That's the kind of thing the cozy fantasy is going for.
Yes. And this is the thing. We have to have shenanigans. I said we'd circle back to shenanigans. That's because it's fun to say. But shenanigans, problems, but silly, not scary. And I think there was a line about how they always work out. Because, like, Wanda is smart enough to know that you can't have a perfect life, a perfect problem-free life. Like, this is even like in The Matrix. There's a thing about how they tried, like, 2 or 3 previous versions of The Matrix that was utopia. And the humans rebel. Like, the humans will not accept utopia. So if she made utopia, she would not be able to trick her brain, even part of the time, to believing this was real. There needs to be conflict, there needs to be crisis, and there need to be problems to be solved. But in this world, once again, bringing in that sitcom idea, those problems, those crises, they are low stakes. They are no violence. They're totally peaceful. They're usually based on misunderstandings. And they're always resolved. 22 minutes in, they're resolved, and they're sitting happy on the couch at the end.
Yes.
And this might even be something for PCs to notice, that we've mentioned how things don't make sense. And the whole, where do they get the coffee from? It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, there's not an economy. There's not trade routes. There's not an ecosystem, just like there isn't for your average sitcom.
It's like, unless there's a plot point that they're running out of coffee and they need to get more, then the, like, canisters full of coffee beans are always, like, 3/4 full.
And that there's a lot of these low-key domestic problems, and even in terms of work, it's always the more eventful and enjoyable parts of work. It's not like the drudgery. So the whole, like, sweeping up, stacking up the dishes, straightening the chairs. Like, if you watch The Flash and Iris West is working at Jitters, like, you never see her scrubbing the floor. You never see her, like, cleaning the machine. It's always the sort of easier, simpler, I don't want to say romantic, but more romantic part of the work.
Like the kind of like stuff that you can do while having a conversation, so that there's business happening on screen.
Exactly. Yeah, your Law and Order, like talking while talking about the dead body you found, putting a pizza in an oven, and there's like the stakes don't really make sense consistently in terms of an economic or a political life. There's a lot of like, if X doesn't happen, we have to close the shop, but it's always going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's just to give stakes to the drama. That's just to kind of give a crisis to overcome. Why? If this festival, the festival's happening, if we can get enough people to like try our treats, then we'll save the shop. Just like every week is we'll save the shop, or we'll have, and it's never like an actual, you could track the shop's economy, money over time. It's always both doing fine and right about to close.
You can get a lot of really good inspiration, I think, from, like, the baking-themed Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yes.
Because we are pulling a little bit, like, as much from the Christmas Switch
as
we are from Legends and Lattes.
Because it's the same core we're going for of this fluffy, escapist, this is the Wanda wants to create a story that is a story that has conflict, that has drama, but is a warm bubble bath. Yeah.
So it is like, just a series of Hallmark Christmas movies happening over and over again.
We win this bake-off, we'll save the shop. Well, let me see your business plan that's dependent on winning an international European bake-off or whatever. So we also have this element that they have to hide their adventures for no reason. Like, they can't let people find out they used to be adventurers.
Like, for whatever reason, the town of Westview, they're really suspicious of adventurers. They don't want adventurers coming in and bringing all that trouble into town.
Yeah, trouble in a town.
Because of that whole hiding that that Wanda has magic and that Vision is a robot are, like, a really big part of WandaVision.
Right.
Just this silly, like, nonsense, like, tension creator.
Exactly.
And we need to have a similar silly nonsense tension creator here. So, we're going with the, for whatever reason, the town of Westview, they just don't like adventurers.
They can't let anyone know they're an adventurer because it is that whole, it generates drama. Like, it's just, it gives, like, we need to do the bake-off, but also it's our anniversary, but also the health inspector's coming, but they might find out we're adventurers. Like, it's just, it's drama with no stakes. But it even could be subconsciously that she wants to conceal the truth, like the idea of she's concealing the truth. And this is kind of the subconscious manifestation of that. And then we have, like, WandaVision was riffing on sitcoms, and it was specifically ripping on the kind of domestic family sitcoms from, like, the different eras. And we do want to draw from sitcoms to try and evoke that, but it's a workplace sitcom.
Yeah.
So we're even imagining, like, they live above the shop. Because, the shop is the center. The shop is everything. The shop is the main set. 2/3 to 3/4 of the scenes of a given episode, air quoting, are in the shop.
Yeah.
And so we don't really have the neighbors. Like, you have the neighborhood. That's what kind of gave this the wacky supporting cast in, like, a domestic sitcom. Whereas this is much more the co-workers and the regulars in the shop. And this is a great chance to bring in a lot of fun cameos.
Yes, it is. So Tom went and looked up because I haven't read a whole lot of cozy fantasy. I've read Legends and Lattes. I got about halfway through the Secret Society of Irregular Witches, but it was not my alley. But Tom, like, he went and looked up a whole bunch of the, like, both for cozy fantasy and for coffee shop fanfic. Because this is that's basically what this is a, like Legends and Lattes.
Yeah.
It's a combination of those two things. And going through and trying to figure out how to fit some fun cameos into those character types was super fun. So we have Agnes, the saucy waitress, who just, she'll go around and be flirting with your PCs and with all the customers, and
a lot of double entendres and winks
about how hot the coffee is. Wink, wink. And you saw that there was usually, like, the Schmendrick type.
There's usually a Schmendrick type, like an incompetent magician.
Yeah.
I have not read, I've read 100% less cozy fantasy than Rachel has, but 2 different, like, lists of sort of, here's the stock characters, here's the types you have, here's a guides to writing it, mentioned a kind of incompetent, a bumbling magician.
Yeah. And we can kind of bring some possible dramatic stakes, but again, low shenanigan dramatic stakes into the bumbling, incompetent magician by having him be very nosy. And his magic keeps almost uncovering what's going on, but not quite. So kind of like if you've read Legends and Lattes, the student who's studying the ley lines. And, you know, he doesn't have any malicious intent or anything like that. He just, you know, is studying the way that the ley lines intersect, and that means that he might discover Viv's secret. And so we have our nosy, incompetent magician who's bumbling around here, Stephen.
Stephen Strange, perhaps.
Perhaps.
With his beard and his gray temples.
His green talisman that he wears around his neck.
And yeah, this is a nice, like, once again, it's the very, like, malice and violence and like, real conflict-free drama of, he's like, oh, my readings, I've read the runes, and they've shown me there's magic here, and I'm gonna ferret it out. And they're like, oh, Stephen, what are you? You crazy guy. You must have read those runes wrong. And you can see the sitcom episode. You can see where the laugh tracks are gonna be. We'll make some joke about how bad a magician he is, and there'll be the laugh track. And
once again, with these cameos, this is where you start getting the cosmic horror in, because this is Stephen Monkey Flunking Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, being forced to be Schmendrick for Wanda's amusement.
The equivalent of, like, a Mordenkainen. Being forced to be, the bumbling guy pulling the rabbit out of the hat. Who's always making jokes about his spells misfiring.
Yeah. Oh.
There's
totally some bad blood between them, and that's why she's doing it.
Another type that we saw a lot of was the sort of monster, like traditionally kind of villainous evil monster, but they were, like, really cute and sweet and had a heart of gold. So there's, like, a lot of necromancers, a lot of, like, undead. And they're the kind of person who would normally in a D&D adventure slot into the monster type, but being but they're really cute and sweet, and they're just a big, you know, fluffy puppy. Rachel came up with this one, too.
Yes. We have Bruce, the friendly bespectacled troll. And he's a troll, but he's just the sweetest guy, and he's very erudite, and he just likes to sit at the coffee shop and just declaim about, like,
he's reading his books with his little books with his big hands.
Yes.
And that's in terms of types. That's the ones I really zoomed in on, except for one we're going to mention in a minute. But this lends itself, you know, Bruce immediately lends itself to, he flirts a lot with Natasha, who's our local watch officer, and who's maybe a former rogue herself, and that's why she doesn't like adventurers.
Yeah, she knows that they're nothing but trouble. Maybe she was just kind of a shady party, so she knows that
So she can sort of, like, she can be a big source of that drama. She can be the one who's like, I hope there are no adventurers around here.
Yes, she's always on the brink of discovery.
Yes, always about to discover they were adventurers. And then, you know, you could bring in more. You could have Clint the Archer, who's in the Watch too, who's old friends with Natasha. He's a ranger, something like that. If you wanted to bring in Captain America, you'd have Steve the barista or Bucky or both of them.
And they're always flirting.
Yeah, once again,
they've got their will, they won't attention.
Nothing like you're not gonna do anything Marvel and coffee shop related, not have your Steve and Bucky romance. From my brief dip into that world. And we're talking about the shop could close, the health inspector. So we have, of course, Nick Fury, the eye patched, like, he's the chief. He's the inspector. He's some kind of authority position in the village. And once again, there's not, like, a coherent government or charter or anything or laws. He's just an authority figure they have to impress.
Yes.
He's the equivalent of, like, Vision's boss is coming for dinner. Like, he's this authority figure we occasionally have to impress, or the shop will close. And so, once again, the deliberate vagueness is even part of the setting.
Yeah.
They did mention that a lot of times the shop will be sentient. So you could do that. You could have it be sentient, which could be something cool. We don't have too much for that. We can't make a Marvel joke about it. So
yeah.
But one thing, they say there's usually a cute pet, and the cute pet is usually, like, a monster in disguise, or, like, is a monster, like, you know, a little, like, a common one is, like, your pet mimic. And
or there was in Legends and Lattes, there was the dire cat.
Yeah, and it's, like, normally, once again, kind of like the necromancer troll thing, like, normally this would be a monster you fight, but now it's just basically a big puppy.
And we have a real obvious one for that if you've seen Captain Marvel. So they've got the coffee shop pet, Goose the cat.
They've got Goose the cat.
Who, you know, every now and then turns into a tentacled monster and, like, takes care of their rat problem by, you know, just tentacles out, eats the rat, and then is an adorable cat again. And you can even have the, like, part of the shenanigans are only Wanda and Vision know that Goose the cat is a monster, and they have to keep covering it up, especially when Tasha's in town.
Yeah.
Or when Steven the Bumbling Magician is around.
They always almost see it.
Yes! Goose will monster out, and then Steven will come running in and say that he just got a magical reading.
That's so funny. Like, you can see...
awful!
You can... Well, we'll get to that. But, like, you can see this sitcom, right? You can, like, imagine episodes. It was like, oh, remember that episode where that sitcom happened? You'd be like, oh, yeah. No, wait, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. And this is where you get one plot element, because that's a lot of setting. And that is the big thing, going off of WandaVision, is who is the Agatha? One of these NPCs, or an NPC you make up, is not really one of the people being mind controlled. They're pretending to be. Mm-hmm. They are a very evil, very powerful spellcaster who has discovered this and who is playing along. They think that there's this, like, some kind of powerful magic is making this crazy coffee shop reality bubble. And so they're playing along to figure out what it is and try and take that power away. Yeah. And probably in the metaphysics of Ravenloft, they don't realize that it's like that she's a domain lord. They think she's just kind of got powerful sorceress. But maybe it could be they're trying to take over and become a domain lord themselves. Maybe they're like, this is...
Which would be a bold choice.
Yeah. I mean, not unprecedented, right? Yeah. So... Either way, you've got that person to be the wild card. You've got that person to be, they're the chaos agent. They're introducing more and more cracks. They're pressuring because they're trying to sort of figure out what this is about. And once they figure out it's Wanda, like, sort of to figure out what her deal is.
You actually, if you wanted to do, because you mentioned before the whole having, like, some kind of artifact that they found be, like, the equivalent for having a piece of the Mind Stone in her. Like, if you want to even have it be that she does have, like, this piece of some kind of artifact in her. And so they're trying to figure out how to get that. That might be a way to go with it.
No, that's a great idea, yeah.
So some way to do... Or I don't know if there is, like, a monster that has, like, Agatha's whole, like, magic stealing
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. But they could be one of those.
Yeah.
And they just Wanda looks like the most delicious buffet.
Yeah. And they're just trying to figure out her deal, find her weaknesses, and then one way or another take her power. And this is great because it gives you a kind of a third party. You've got, like, your PCs in Vision, you've got Wanda, but just like in the show, it kind of gives you a third party to bounce off.
Yeah, throw a span around the works.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they'll team up with Agatha, maybe they'll stop her, maybe they'll decide she's worse than Wanda, or she's a more immediate threat. Maybe if you want to kind of have, they have to team up with Wanda, like in the show. It's really easy to be the Agatha character is going to, like, drain all the lives. Is going to actually kill everybody in the village to take this power.
You could totally have Agatha, like, tricking the PCs into oh no, we're going to, like, drain Wanda's power, but they don't know that she's actually planning to take it. So you can have, it ends up like the boss fight with Agatha. Yeah.
So a lot of options, and that's nice because then it lets you shake up the conflict and take it in a bunch of different ways. And Agatha, obviously, who is it? The obvious choice would be an Agnes, but that also made great red herring if they've seen WandaVision. And Steven, once again, if we're doing this as a Mordenkainen level spellcaster, then you even get he's kind of doing the perverse joke of being a Schmendrick.
Yeah.
And Bruce could also be fun in terms of this such a goofy character, but that, like, intelligence, that undercurrent of violence.
Yeah.
A lot of potential there. So I would probably go with Steven or Bruce. The great thing is it could be any of these people, and you could throw a real curveball to your players.
Yeah. Honestly, I actually might go with Goose the Cat.
Yeah, Goose the Cat, yeah. Turns out to be a weird illithid thing.
Exactly. It's some kind of aberration.
Yeah. That infiltrated this and slotted in. They didn't have a pet and slotted in the role of the pet. That'd be awesome, too, yeah. The boss fight is Goose the Cat. So, one other location, because once again, this is not like a coherent world. This is like, there's a couple of sets. And then occasionally there'll be another thing. But there really is the shop. There's a couple stores they go to. There's, like, their rooms of their living quarters above the shop. Maybe one or two of the NPCs, houses is a place they go. And then we'll also have, of course, and this was my idea, so I'm taking this one.
Yes.
The Green Hydra Tea Shop.
Yes, we do.
So, this is Team Rocket to their Ash Ketchum.
I think this is the biggest thing we're taking from the Christmas Switch.
Yes. You need a rifle a rival sort of to them. Maybe we see we have a full-on set built of the Green Hydra. Maybe we just hear about it, right? And we just see they come in and are snobby.
Yes.
The people from the Green Hydra, and they're always competing with them. They're always trying to outdo them in the endless parade of festivals this town has. That involve, like, bakeries and treats and themes and decorations. That was another thing with the cozy fantasy, was there always a lot of festivals because it makes a set piece.
Yes.
Like, it gives you stakes. It gives you, like, we have to win the bake-off. And it gives you just, like, a colorful set piece to do.
If you don't read a lot of cozy fantasy, but you do binge on the Hallmark movies, you absolutely could plan that and have it be it's always Christmas.
Yes, yeah.
There's just, they're non-stop winter solstice baking festivals.
Yeah.
It's always the winter solstice.
And you can even do this, like, wonderful, deliberately not making sense of, like, okay, we've been here a week and we've had, like, the Harvest Festival and the Yuletide Festival and the Winter Night Festival, and, like, no, this doesn't make sense. These seasons don't make sense. It's like I watched this soap opera for a while in high school, and, like, in a soap opera, you know, a week of episodes, like 5 episodes, covers, like, 1 to 2 days of time. It maybe. Usually one day of the soap opera universe. And they always wanted to have their coherent holiday thing, you know, having the holiday happening in the soap opera universe when it's happening in the real world. So it's like, it's Thanksgiving, then it's Christmas, then it's New Year's, then it's Valentine's Day. Like immediately, boom, 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 when we're out there, no time passing at all between them. And that's this world as well.
Yes.
It's Thanksgiving.
New Year's is the day after Christmas.
Yeah, the day after Christmas. Immediately it's New Year's. And they're talking about how to have the New Year festival. And they're like, wait, isn't there supposed to be, like, space between those? And they just everyone kind of looks uncomfortable, shrugs, and then goes about their busy business. And so, yeah, the Green Hydra, they're rivals, they're snobby. You could bring in as many MCU villain cameos as you want. And
or possibly Tony Stark.
And they cheat, they sabotage, they, like, mess up. They're the rivals, but they always beat them. And Wanda, if weird stuff happens, they might also be useful for Wanda to, like, deflect suspicion. Like, oh, it must have been those Green Hydra people, you know, sabotaging things. Or setting us up to fail.
You could also have it be, like, maybe the Agatha is, like, setting up to look like the Green Hydra people. Yes. Agatha, since they're the ones who are actively working against Wanda, not covertly working against Wanda. So,
as I said, you could have whatever other random things for that quote-unquote episode you need. If they need to go to the market, if they need to go to the town hall building, if they need to make go to Director Fury's office and deliver coffee and sweets for an important meeting with important people, important business people having an important business meeting about business numbers.
They do have business numbers.
And the vagueness is part of the story. It's part of the hook. The fact that they are in a world that narratively does not care about this stuff is a clue that they're in a world that doesn't narratively care about this stuff. But we have this perfect little bubble, this little Swiss watch of conflict, shenanigans, rising action, lessons learned, hugs, falling action, relaxing on the couch, closing up the shop. And that's what Wanda wants. She wants that perfect sealed Swiss watch bubble. But we have some chaos agents were introduced in that bubble, and that's the PCs. Rachel, what do you do with it?
Dread possibilities. I can no longer forestall describing what happens to me when I entered Westview, or detailing the time I spent there. Very well. The moment I crossed the border into Westview, a tremendous wave of grief crashed over me, leaving me shaking and breathless. I heard a voice which I would soon know to be Wanda Maximoff's, whispering Vision's name. Then, louder, she proclaimed, "Witch Hunter." My ring of protection went cold, attempting to shield my mind, but Maximoff was too powerful. Immediately, my body straightened, a determined frown pasting itself to my face. My legs marched me into town, and I heard myself demanding an audience with the captain of the guard, claiming that I had evidence of a witch in the vicinity, and that I would stop at nothing until I uncovered her. It was nothing like what I had experienced at the hands of Alma Madrigal or even Lotso. Maximoff did not alter my personality or my desires. She simply supplanted them. I was a helpless passenger, watching from somewhere behind my own eyes as Captain Romanoff and I agreed to root out any spellcasting adventurers who may have infiltrated the town. What followed were several days of humiliation as I conspired with one townsperson after another to hunt for witches. Whenever any of us suffered a particularly embarrassing mishap, a roar of laughter would echo in the back of my mind, becoming louder the more we degraded ourselves. I believe that Stephen, the man forced into the role of the incompetent wizard, was either a relative newcomer like me or a particularly iron-willed individual. I could see the panic behind his eyes when we interacted, and once his entire body froze for almost a full minute as he and Maximoff struggled for control. I saw no such resistance in the others, as though they had already given up. My memories of engaging with Vision and Wanda Maximoff and of discussing them with other townspeople are clear. Others are hazy. At one point, I watched myself making plans in the Green Hydra tea shop with another witch hunter named Mordo. Then I blinked to find that 4 days had passed and I was walking to the Sunflower Parade in the town square. I know I must have bathed and relieved myself and eaten food other than pastries, but I cannot remember doing so. I know that I slept, however. When we slept, we had Wanda Maximoff's nightmares. I dreamed of Vision's death and of a pit of identical Warforged corpses. I dreamed of Vision telling me that I had become a monster, and when I opened my mouth to argue, I could only gibber. As the days passed, I noticed Vision and Maximoff were beginning to argue, and their words were more barbed than the insipid banter of the other citizens. It came to a head as I sat in their coffee shop with Mordo. I heard Vision shouting at Maximoff that he knew something was wrong, that she was either a fool or a liar if she claims not to see it, and that he knew she was no fool. As they argued, I felt the paralyzing pressure of Maximoff's grief lessening in my mind. I pushed back, hard, and found I was able to move of my own volition. The outskirts of town were too far. Maximoff would not remain distracted long enough for me to escape. I had to do something to unnerve her further, or to trust in Vision for help, or both. I leaped to my feet and screamed at the top of my lungs that Vision was right, that something was wrong, that she was controlling us. Vision turned to me with a start, and Maximoff glared, her eyes glowing red. I felt the pressure in my mind again, but this time there was something else. A color that was not a color, a sound that was not a sound. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the ground outside of Westview, my nose and ears bleeding and my back throbbing with pain where I had slammed against a tree. Maximoff would rather cast me out of her perfect town than risk me upsetting her husband.
I want adventure in the great wide somewhere.
I want it more than I can tell. So, why did you come to Westview? This, a lot of our default trade caravan.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work here.
Nature is not out of balance, and there is no trade caravan.
Yeah, that's right. What are you even going to do? Why would anyone go anywhere that didn't have those problems?
Because deliberately there are no trade caravans, because everything just kind of like magically refills itself.
The food, the shelves are all restocked. The flour and the chocolate and everything are there to bake the pastries, the coffee beans. Unless it's a plot point, the coffee bean canisters are always 3/4 full.
Yeah. So, really, the main reason that you would end up in Westview, because you can't even like randomly wander in there because Wanda's trying to keep you out.
Yeah.
So, if you have any other ideas for plot hooks, let us
hook
know.
us up, yeah.
But the one that we can think of is you're following someone, you're tracking someone, you're trying to find someone who has vanished into Westview and not come out. Basically, you're looking for a Geraldine.
Yes.
Who has gone into Westview and can't come out again.
There's deliberately nothing special about this place that would bring outsiders. And it's incredibly intentional. It is supposed to be the most generic village possible. There's nothing special about it. And you can't someone by accident, because the whole point is Wanda wants to keep people out. So the only reason people would choose to come here is to look for someone. The only notable thing about it is that people go and they never come out.
Yeah. So you could have it be that someone your PCs care about was like kind of part of the original population of Westview. And so they're kind of like getting sucked into it, and your PCs, like they go to this village to visit their friend, and suddenly like from the outside it looks like it's empty and they really don't want to go in there. But man, that's creepy. Or if you want to go after someone who's disappeared, then a way that you could do it is have Geraldine be something like a Kargat agent.
Yes.
Which are Aslan's secret police. we're defaulting to Kargot agent, but really any kind of, like, agent of a darklord, or even, like, maybe one of Van Richten's people, something.
Yeah, the Alan Array.
Yeah, the Alan Array people. Yeah. They had gone into Westview to investigate it. They got mind whammied. They disappeared. And so you're being sent in to look for them. It might be because they're from the Alan Gray network, and so are you, and so, you're the next ones who are getting sent in. If they are something like a Kargot agent, then it might be that Aslan is saying, no, I already lost one agent in here. I'm not gonna send in any of my other, like, highly valuable people. Let me send in some nice expendable assets or adventurers, as I like to call them.
One will more politely call them.
Yes. And that could be another good, like, figuring out who the NPC is, figuring out who the Geraldine is. Like, maybe you have a portrait of them that you can go around looking with, and in that case, that makes things a little bit easier. Or it could be that, that you just have, like, a description to go off of. And that allows you to do some creepy stuff with the who they are versus who they're supposed to be. Yes.
And this is where we're getting into the plot hook section. What do you do when you get there? And this is also where, I believe at the beginning of the episode, we said something to the effect of, this is maybe our darkest setting yet. And we haven't done, most has been wacky sitcom and shenanigans. It's been wacky sitcom shenanigans. It's been talking about the silly things of Steven, all this is magic malfunctioning, but him almost catching them. Almost catching Wanda using magic to sweep up the floors. But here's, much like WandaVision, where we start to see the intense darkness under this.
Yes.
And that could play into this whole, you find the trail, you start to think you found that agent, but they're not who they are anymore, that NPC, they are a wacky sitcom neighbor.
Yeah. And that's, that's even creepier if it is someone that you know, but you can still have the punchline if it isn't. Actually, if it's a Kargot agent or something like that, it might even be someone who's tangled with as an antagonist.
Ooh, that could be great, yeah.
And it's you know that they're this just, like, awful, stone-cold, professional, like, Javert type you've run into before. And now they're, like, this shy, sweet little barista.
Yeah.
Who's, like, nursing a crush on, the cute regular customer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, this is so dark. So, you go in, have some sitcom shenanigans. You're trying to get the lay of the land, figure out what's going on. If you find this person, they're not responding to their name, and they're completely different than they were, and they're a shy little barista that has a crush on one of the regulars. The PCs are trying to figure out what's going on. You have a couple of episodes, an episode or two of sitcom shenanigans, but as time goes by, creepy stuff keeps happening.
Yes.
Cracks in the mirror just keep forming. That they might push, things make no sense. And if you saw WandaVision, they did this so perfectly.
They did.
They point out something makes sense, and the NPC gets a scared look on their face and starts stammering and sweating, and then just snaps back to fun sitcom banter, completely ignoring their question. Cracks will appear in reality, and suddenly the building won't be nice or pretty anymore. It'll be just dilapidated shack, and then it'll flicker back into being what it was. And
someone will, who's nervous about being questioned about all these things, will hold their coffee cup, they'll squeeze it too hard and it'll shatter in their hands, and they'll actually react as though their hands have been sliced open, not the oh, ouch, that you would get in a sitcom.
Yeah.
Nick Fury can do the whole big thing that we saw in the first episode. Who? Damn it! Who are you? Who? Like suddenly go from nicely questioning them to flying off the handle, and then just suddenly pulls it all back together again.
Yeah.
Okie dokie, neighbor.
Okie dokie, neighbor. Yeah, just it's so dark. And this is where you can hook up with Vision, because he is the only one around that's reacting. He's the only one around that's noticing this along with the PCs.
Yes. I do want to say, with hooking up with Vision, this is a thing that I thought of while we were talking about, like, closing the borders and that kind of thing. That there are kind of two directions you can go in with when you first enter Westview. And one is the, it's just rebooted, Wanda's just killed Vision again.
Yeah.
Like, he's totally fresh. Like, he's the one that the PCs are going to be pointing everything out to, and, he'll actually be able to be noticing it and putting the pieces together. Like, if you want it to be kind of a more involved, the PCs go in and notice everything, and, you spend a couple sessions there and are kind of, guiding Vision through this and getting him to be their ally, then that might be the way to take it. if you do that, then you can't have the thing where they go in and, like, are mind whammied to begin with, but then Vision pulls them out of it, because if you're doing that version, the Vision doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
So it kind of, if you want to do the PCs go in and are initially mind whammied, then you can't do the, like, everything's just rebooted and the PCs are kind of like the ones who are able to save Vision. He has to have this much more, like, active agency-filled role. Both valid, whichever you want to do.
It's like, did you want to have, like, episode 1 Vision? Episode 2 Vision? Or do you want to have Halloween Vision?
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, he knows something's wrong. He is very confident Wanda is connected. He just know what it is, and he is, like, actively kind of working against her. He's like, I'm going to lie to her and tell her I'm doing neighborhood watch stuff so that I can be away from her, so that I can kind of explore the town without her knowing where I am.
Yeah. And the one is a slower burn that kind of gives your PCs more agency in helping Vision wake up. And the other one gets you to the fireworks factory right away.
That's a good one-shot. If you want to do a one-shot of this Halloween to the ending. To the finale is a good place to stick them in.
Both valid. Just I realized as we were talking about that in the first part that, you know, we had, like, these two, like, possibilities are kind of at cross purposes.
So that this happens, like, stuff's escalating. Wanda, you know, the mask is dropping more and more. You can have real heartache of her stuff with Vision. You can maybe get flashes of the pile of dead Vision, like, get how dark the story is,
or like that flash of, like, a Vision, like, is suddenly a corpse.
Yeah. And it's building to a boss fight. And it could be a boss fight against Wanda, and it could be a boss fight against an Agatha-type character who's, like, taken Wanda's power. Or it could be even just, if you don't want a full-on boss fight, it could even be, like, you do a sort of Halloween neighborhood watch-esque complicated plan to have a million distractions happen to sort of put enough pressure on Wanda that she, like, loses control. So, like, you can get out, you can get people out, you can save people from her influence. If you don't want to have a full-on, like, roll initiative, tracking hit points, kind of like a climax. Some kind of climactic confrontation, either direct or indirect, either violent or even social. If you can just social persuasion roll Wanda enough to make her break down sobbing, and once again, she kind of lose control. But some kind of confrontation with Wanda, and then get out, because you don't want to be okie dokie neighbor. They don't want to be flirty baristas for the rest of eternity. They want to go back to their regular lives of non-flirty barista-ness. So, and then we always have the what can you accomplish? Like, in WandaVision, you can't do this, flipping Wanda permanently. You can't have her make peace, but, neither did the MCU. So, so we can take a page from that, and on a small-scale victory, you can get your person out, right? You get your Geraldine out. You get your Monica Rambeau out. You are able to rescue the person you came to rescue. Maybe you're able to rescue, like, some of the townspeople you befriended. Like, you can't get everyone, but you befriended Bruce and Natasha and Clint, and you're able to, like, get them out of the village, and they can, like, actually kind of go back to having real lives again. And then the ultimate, and this is so much I remember this was your idea, the sort of ultimate victory we can offer. You can, in a sense, save everybody but Wanda.
So you could, if your PCs are really into the idea of saving the town, then kind of, sort of the equivalent of, temporarily killing Strahd, Christmas Strahd, is you could do something that you could either, like, quote-unquote, kill Wanda, or you could have her, like, expend so much of her energy that she basically just, like, burns herself out and goes dormant for a while. And you save the town. That if you do something that kills Wanda, or that, that causes her to go dormant, and the Dark Powers aren't done playing with her yet, then they're going to go and drop her into another town somewhere, but this town is free.
Yes. This town will not be Westview anymore, or this Westview will not be her Westview anymore. And then in some amount of time, much like with Strahd, in some amount of time, she'll regenerate, and another Westview will pop up somewhere. Some other normal, miserable Ravenloft village will turn into Westview. And it... Okay. This is about Vorlogs?
No, this is about the soulless people in 5e and why I hate it. Because by 5e metaphysics, it would be that, like, Wanda just kind of appears with this village full of non-people, and the non-people are created along with the village, and they're props in as much as the houses are, and this is why I really hate that aspect of 5e.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I try not to be a hater about 5e. I try not to be as different, so it sucks. And there are things that I do like about it better than I like about, But I hate the people with no souls thing, because what is the point of saving them then? And that's the whole thing with Westview, and why it's horrifying, is that these are real people, and there are real stakes, and you get to save those real people. And then, maybe it's to take the sting out so that when she, rematerializes in another Westview somewhere else, then it doesn't mean that you haven't, all your hard work ain't been in vain for nothing. But
yeah,
it ain't been in vain for nothing the first time, because I hate it. Anyway.
And this is even better than your staking Strahd, because, he's gonna regenerate in Barovia, but this is like, what if you could stake Strahd and, like, he moved to another country?
Yeah.
And, like, this village, these cities, these towns, these people were free. And that's what you can do with this, because she's a sort of, like, parasite.
Yeah.
And you've got her off one host, and she will find another host, but it's going to be a different host.
Yeah, she's in a little village in Darkon that Azalin sent his agent to investigate. And then later on, some poor little village in Reachmalo is going to, get wanted. But then they're at least not going to have to gnaw us.
Yeah, this is, like, honestly, other than the being forced to be a sitcom character and having maybe horrible torment, this isn't a bad life for your average Ravenloft peasant. So we like to talk about how to take this and modify it for younger players, older players, other variants, AUs, things like that in our Dread Possibility section. We always start with aging down, and I'm going to say don't.
Much like last month.
Yeah, this is so dark.
This is so dark.
This is so dark.
And much like with last month, rather than saying a full-on, like, aging down, running it for your kids who love
WandaVision? Your kids are cool.
Yeah. This is more for running it for your players who love Wanda.
Yes.
And it's not aging down in the sense of running it for kids, it's softening it.
Yes.
Like, especially, again, for people who thought that Wanda got done dirty by Multiverse of Madness, which, she did.
Yeah. You're right. So, like, in this version, there's no pile of dead visions. In this version, she's rebooting it.
Yeah, but she's
which
not
is
killing
bad.
him.
Which is bad. But there's not a pile of his corpse in a pit outside her house.
Yeah. And so rather than Wanda being the Dark Lord, it can be much more like Agatha is deliberately manipulating her to be her worst self. Like, maybe even this is like a cursed town rather than a domain.
Yeah.
And Agatha wants to get her to become a Dark Lord for whatever reason.
Ooh,
like, maybe there's some way that Agatha can, like, tap into her power, but only if she becomes a Dark Lord.
Like, maybe this was legitimately just this crazy sorceress reality bubble explosion, and, like, it's not a domain yet.
Yeah.
And it's kind of coalescing into a domain if things don't change.
And in that case, your PCs can redeem Wanda, and they can get, they can have the whole ending where she, lets everybody go, and then traps Agatha in a tiny hellscape in her own mind.
Tiny little Westview in her brain. Yeah. That's the heart of it with sort of quote-unquote aging down version. Is you can redeem Wanda.
Yeah.
Like, go back to the source material. We made this darker, pile of dead visions. Wanda's being her worst self. Just undo that.
We always say go back to the source material for doing it for kids. And here we're saying don't do it for kids. But if you want to do it for people who love Wanda, go back to the source material.
Yeah. And they could still be a really cool, fun, alternatively hilarious and incredibly creepy, like WandaVision, a story with a ton of Marvel Easter eggs for you to do for your players. Oh, you got an idea?
I got an idea. Just for like a motivation for Agatha, if you want to have Wanda be redeemable and a good guy, that it could be something with, like, Agatha trying to manipulate her to turn into a hag.
Oh,
that, like,
that could be good. Yeah, I love that.
She's trying to get her to turn into a hag so they can form a coven.
Oh, I love that. That's great stuff.
Yeah,
and because she's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of your red herring could be that there are two Agathas. You found Agnes. So yeah, Agnes. Obviously, Agnes is Agatha Harkness.
Right.
We've seen the show, but no, it turns out that Natasha is also a hag.
I love that. That's great.
A third member.
Do that. So yes, that they're two hags that have found this incredibly powerful spellcaster lady with a very fragile grip on sanity and are pushing her to become a hag.
This is going to be the best coven ever.
This is the best coven ever. We're going to have our whole own town. Then, of course, we have aging up, which is not as difficult to do as Aging Town, because we made it dark, but we can make it darker.
Yeah.
I believe in us.
I do. So, yeah, the show is already pretty dark. And if you just imagine the phrase WandaVision with the brakes off, then you don't need a whole lot of help from there, honestly.
Yeah.
Just like really, really leaning into the suffering of the PCs. Yeah. Like, they touched on it in horrifying ways in the show. We got, tell my husband I love him and to never ever come back here.
Yeah. I think someone asked Vision to kill him. Or, oh gosh, I'll never forget when we sleep, we have your nightmares.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And just that.
Yes. And, oh gosh, all the stuff with Dottie and her daughter. Just, she could be school bully, if you like that plot line.
They could be friends.
Yeah, just leaning harder into that horror and making that kind of as the breaks are coming off, making that the primary mood.
Yes.
Especially because with the show, they wanted us to still have sympathy for Wanda at the end. Yes. And if you don't have any concern for that, this could get so dark so fast.
Yeah. I mean, even with a lot of this stuff, there's a whole that Wanda did not consciously know a lot of what she was doing. She did not consciously know what she was doing to the people in the village. Or even that, like, there's this scene... Halloween. Back to Halloween.
Because that was so creepy.
It's really good, yeah, and it's really creepy. Pietro's like saying, "Wow, you handle the ethical implications pretty well," and he like goes through and lists everybody has better jobs, everybody has nicer houses, couples are together, children basically are on ice, except for the occasional special episode, like a Halloween episode where you need a lot of kids because she doesn't want that on her conscience of puppeting children, and it's still horrible, it's still awful. But there's that very delicate balance of maintaining the sympathy. And what if Wanda didn't care about any of that stuff?
What if she didn't care about any of that? Or like when they're telling her all the horrible things that are happening, she's like, no, you're happy. Like she believes that she's giving them this perfect sitcom life. And again, what if she didn't care?
Yeah, what if she didn't care?
They told her that when they slept, they had her nightmares, so she told them to just shut up and turn them back on again.
Yeah.
And like... The whole she has all this trouble, controlling too many people and keeping the place spinning in the air. What if you go to the outskirts of town, and there are a lot of empty, overgrown houses?
Yeah.
And you go inside, and there's a real bad smell.
Yeah, and she's just cold. An average, I imagine, sitcom or cozy fantasy does not have an entire village's worth of people.
Yeah.
It's a manageable number of characters, and then some background, and then a good number of background extras, and that's all you need, really. The rest of the population is disposable. So, take this stuff in WandaVision and just that more.
Yeah. Like, I feel like you don't need us to tell you a whole lot of how to age this up. Yes.
Then, finally, we have a possible alternate universe. We mentioned the kids. Like, we are focusing on Wanda and Vision. There are a lot of quotes we couldn't use because Wanda and Vision and their children were such a core relationship here.
Yeah.
We don't want to super go into that because we really want to focusing on the WandaVision thing. And once again, my understanding is that's much less of a cozy fantasy thing.
Yeah, again, I haven't read a whole lot in the genre, and the main one that I've read that had children in it was The Secret Society of Irregular Witches. And with that, there are children, but it's much more of like a found family dynamic.
Yeah. So we got a couple possibilities here. Maybe we have, I like this one a lot, the Wanda's just perpetually pregnant. And
she and Vision wanted to start a family.
They want to start a family. They were planning to start a family. She's perpetually pregnant. It's a non-bothersome pregnancy. She gets, the occasional, like, I have weird cravings. Or like, oh, my feet hurt. Let me put them up. Sweeping up sure is hard. None of the actual bad stuff. Yeah. Much like the chores of the coffee shop. None of the actual bad or tedious parts.
Yeah. There's one episode where she has comedic morning sickness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also like this as a potential clue. Is the, like... Wow, Wanda, like, she's pretty pregnant, like, and then someone's like, oh, wow, she's been pregnant since, they arrived here. And like, you said they've been here for 5 years. Beep, 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 beep. Panicked look, dodging questions, sweating. How's this coffee?
With a Warforged, I wonder how that works.
And maybe it's the whole kind of the fun of anticipation. Maybe it's supposed to be part of the torment. The idea is, like, she can't make children, she can't make new life, that like with this all she can do is kind of recreate what's already there. She can't make something new, or even this part of the torment of no, you can't have the life you envisioned, dreamed of having. And once again, maybe she's just trying to avoid the ethical implication of kids, or maybe she doesn't care, and maybe she's going to kidnap some kids.
Maybe she's going to kidnap some kids.
And raise them as her own.
Yes, and then it's going to, eventually rankle her that they don't look like her in Vision, and just leave it at that.
See aging up. So this is, you can bring in the multiverse, you can go into a multiverse of madness direction. Mm-hmm. So, as we mentioned, this is a incredibly fun, incredibly goofy, just absolutely insanely dark, horrifying setting.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I just realized if you're doing kind of like the slow burn, it's starting out like doing all these silly fun shenanigans. That might actually be a fun thing to spring on your PCs if this is like this is the first place the Mists have taken them as Westview, so they don't know it's Ravenloft.
Oh, wow. Boy, that would be something.
If you really want to mess with them, because otherwise it's going to be, they'll like, this is Ravenloft.
Yeah.
There's another shoe here.
They're just waiting for it to drop.
Bad, yeah. So.
If you do that, let us know, because we really want to hear how it goes.
But I don't know how you session zero it. So
yeah, right.
But
if you do, let us know.
Maybe if you know your party really, really well.
Yeah.
If you know your players well enough, then, yeah.
So we will discuss our parting thoughts on this incredibly goofy and yet probably the darkest domain we've done. Domain, in a section we like to call
Parting Thoughts.
The first thing we like to do in the Parting Thoughts section is talk about the genres of horror and how to incorporate them. And genres of horror, this is from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. They give the genres. It's a really, really useful setting for horror gaming, horror creation. Talks about the different signifiers, different fear experiences. So we always like to do that for our domains as well. I feel like I don't want to waste your time here.
We've had some disagreements in previous episodes, but
like, this is the most cosmic-y horror domain you could ever cosmic horror.
Like, even more so than Hercules was.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause that was like, there was this sort of Hercules, we had the idea of tragic fate and there being this kind of like inescapable like gravity that pulled you toward tragic fate. But this is like way past that. This is, you come into this and your mind, your consciousness is overwritten into a wacky sitcom character, while on the inside you're experiencing horrible anguish.
Yeah.
And it's just eternal. Like, this is there's no escape. There's no moment that you're not in the cosmic horror. Like Hercules, in our Hercules domain, there could be parts of your time there where you're not, like, in the cosmic horror. But this is nonstop. This is every minute you're in Westview.
You have no mouth, and you must wacky neighbor.
Yes. I love you. So, yeah, and honestly, I think for the write-up, I'm tempted to just say cosmic horror. It's so cosmic horror. Like, you could get into the psychological horror, because it's specifically your mind and your identity and your memories being overwritten. But, like, not even really, because there's not that you that's being overwritten. Like, you're just being kind of pushed down, and a robot takes the controls of your body.
Yeah, it's a whole, like, once you're in the sunken place at that point, like, you can't really, like, by the time you get to that point, then there's nothing for you to do except be in the sunken place. Yeah. And
so, cool, it was easy.
Yeah.
And I think that is really the genre, even the genre of, like, that you're in the hands of an angry god if you push against this and you're just going to get over it. It's cosmic horror. Yes. So the second thing we like to do is talk about what kind of game to run. Some domains, like obviously we have Barovia, you have Curse of Strahd, domains like Darkon, other domains, you could run a years-long game. There's a ton of plot thread. There's a ton of these very big story arcs. You could just do session after session after session in Barovia, in Darkon, and a couple of others. There are other domains which are really designed to tell one story.
Like Santa, the theater domain.
Santa, the theater domain, we'll talk about shortly. Or we were just talking about, there's this one, Markovia, which is basically the Island of Dr. Moreau domain. And that you don't go there and have like a 4-year campaign in the island, like with the political factions of the Manimals and the subquests and the dungeons and the this and the that. It's like you go there and you do Island of Dr. Moreau.
there could be something interesting with political factions among the animals, but not a years-long campaign.
Yeah. This is you go there and you do Island of Dr. Moreau and you meet them animals and you see Dr. Markovia being a huge jerk, and your presence destabilizes the sort of balance, and there's a manimal uprising and you escape.
Yes.
And that's the domain.
Or are they not, man?
That is the story to tell there, and either of these is fine. Like, it is some of the best Ravenloft stories are going to be in these kind of one-shot domains.
Yes.
Speaking of one-shot domains...
You're not going to be able to spend years and years in Westview.
What about the HOA elections? Like, what about the fundraiser? And this is one of those, like, one-shot or very, very, very short, like, multiple-session adventure. This is, like maybe 10 episodes?
Yeah,
like a 10-episode season, like maybe 8-episode season. So, you go and you come in, it's a sitcom, it's wacky, you maybe have, like, 1 or 2 fluffy adventures, maybe, like, 3 tops.
Yeah.
With the cracks appearing, with these, like, moments of jarring, eerie wrongness that are, like, accelerating. Maybe you befriend Vision, you reach some kind of breaking point, and you get, as we mentioned before, some kind of confrontation with Wanda.
Yes, and you discover that it was Agatha all along. I realized we hadn't done that yet, and Dusty undoubtedly made it the free space on the video sheet,
so here's something. So this is much more the Markovia or the I'm Told Sienna than it is your Barovia or your Darkon. Once again, that's great. And the wonderful thing is, you even have the show as a pacing guide. Like, look at how they paced the show. And you might want to accelerate it because your PCs are going to twig that something's wrong a lot faster.
Yeah.
But, like, that basic, you start with the sitcom, and then you slide into the full-on action climax, like D&D climax, and see how they pace it.
I think basically you would have one, if you're doing the slow burn and not just starting with Halloween, I think it would have one episode that covers the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then an episode that's, the Full House episode that ends with that's ending with Wanda and Vision, like, having their break leading up to the Halloween episode.
Yeah. And then Halloween just goes into then action climax.
Yeah.
This part's easy. It's being easy.
Yes.
Speaking of easy, Rachel, is there any way to bring in some of the older 2E, 3E unified core canon?
Are you ready to hear about Vorlons?
I am so ready to hear about Vorlons.
Well, you're going to have
I've
to
been
wait.
waiting.
First, I'm going to talk about Sienna. So, Sienna, we've mentioned it in a couple previous episodes. The main one I can think of is the Peter Pan episode, but I think we talked about it in some others too. It got a 1-paragraph write-up in Van Rich's Guide to Ravenloft. It got a huge, like, multi-page thing in the second edition, Domains of Dread. And Sienna was very WandaVision-esque.
Yes.
It was, like, the Darklord was this playwright, and his plays weren't getting enough critical acclaim and everything, and so he, like, murdered all of his actors, and then people were booing the shows, and so he burned down the theater, and so now he's got this, like, traveling theater pocket domain. And he's writing all of these plays, and, like, as he's writing them and people such as PCs are coming into the theater, like, he can, like, see kind of all of their thoughts and their memories and everything, and he truly believes that these are characters he invented. And eventually, like, he believes they're characters in his play, and he starts setting about to write these horrible, tragic plays of them as characters, and, like, eventually, like, break their will. And if he succeeds in breaking your will, then you end up believing that you are a character in his plays. And because he's a hack, when this happens, you become just this total one-dimensional version of yourself. So we'd mentioned this again in Neverland, that this is kind of what Peter Pan is doing to everyone. He's just kind of turning them into his, like, flattened puppet versions of themselves. And that's what Lamont Cedium Juice does, is that the longer you stay there, the more kind of, in 5e terms, it would probably be either your trait, ideal, bond, or flaw becomes the only thing about you. And just everything else gets wiped away. So if your flaw is always being angry, you're just angry guy. Everything else is gone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good system.
I know, right? And actually, I had forgotten, because second edition tends to be really clunky, but actually the mechanic that they have for it is shockingly elegant. And works really well for, like, a slow burn your PC starting to get pulled into Wanda's thing. Because the thing that they had for it was every day you make an intelligence save. And if you fail, you lose a point of intelligence, and then just kind of, like, as a role-playing thing, you're starting to, you know, like, embrace either your ideal trait, bond, or flaw, like, to the exclusion of all else. And then the next day you make another intelligence save, but you're death spiraling, because every time you fail, you lose a point of intelligence. And if you get reduced to a 0 intelligence, then you become an NPC and are just a prop in his play.
That's a good system.
I know, right?
It's simple and elegant, as you said.
And it's a really good way if you want to have kind of the okie dokie neighbor thing with the PCs, but not totally okie dokie neighbor them. You could have them be, like, they can feel that they're losing themselves. You're going to want to decide what stat you want to use. It would be one of the mental stats. You'd want to do one that's not anybody's primary stat. Like, if you have a wizard and you're, you know, killing everybody's intelligence, that's really not cool. But, like, if you don't have any int-based classes in your party, then you could do intelligence. If you don't have any wisdom-based, you can do wisdom. That could be a
charisma
cool,
even. It could be charisma,
yeah, because that's your force of personality.
Exactly. The interesting thing I could see is that it's not just reducing you to your ideal trait bond flow, which is fantastic for Sienna.
Yeah.
And I love that. I want to steal it for something. But that she's, like, writing a new personality.
Yeah.
So I could maybe be seeing, like, as it's going down, she's, like, rewriting your ideal bond flaw.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's when whatever it is, wisdom, charisma, and whatever hits 0, they get rewritten. And maybe you even have certain milestones where if you fail to save, then for, you know, for a certain period of time, your stuff gets rewritten.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, you're not a dark and haunted warlock with a pact with an unknown being of dark purpose. You're a wacky neighbor.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that, yeah. We were talking about the whole thing with possibly her wanting kids. We mentioned Tristessa as the one of the not so great Dark Lords. And that was one thing with Tristessa was she and her baby were put to death because they were drow and her baby was a drider, and she, you know, killed the people who killed her baby for being disabled. Hashtag Tristessa did nothing wrong.
Get started, guys.
Aslan beat us to it.
Let's get it trending. Confuse everybody on X.
When Aslan was doing his Dark reviews on Twitter, he got Tristessa did nothing wrong going for a while.
Nice.
But one of the things, like, in order to get safe passage through Keening, if you're a terrible person, you could bring a baby. And, you know, Tristessa doesn't know how to take care of a baby, and this never went anywhere good.
Yeah, right.
But if you wanted to do, like, again, if you like Tristessa, but you don't know how to do anything with Keening, you could bring something similar to that over with Wanda.
Oh, yeah, that could be a really cool kind of mix this and kind of do a version of Keening where it's much more WandaVision.
Yeah.
That'd be neat.
That would be neat. Incidentally, with Keening, I've never grokked Keening. It never made a whole lot of sense to me. But then there was a Mexican Ravenloft fan in a Facebook group that I was in who said that he loved it because it's the La Llorona domain. And I think that they wasted that. I don't think it is the La Llorona domain.
But
now I want it to be.
Yes,
so take that. Run with it, everybody. The other way to bring in a domain, if you're hearing that, you know, you go to Westview and then your memory gets rewritten, you might be saying, aha, that sounds like Old Darkon. And yes, it does. Because that was a thing in Old Darkon that you would go and in 1 to 3 months, then your memory would be rewritten and you would have lived in Darkon all your life. And then you leave Darkon and you remember that you...
What a weird...
It was really weird.
It was
really weird. Yeah.
Of Darkon.
I don't know if there's a reason that they did this. Aslan, I'm sure you know there's a reason that you did this. So yeah, and just let us know in the Discord.
Extremely overcomplicated. But my working theory is there was, like, an adventure that had this as a premise set in Darkon, and then everyone's like, well, I guess we're stuck with this now. Like,
my theory...
I guess we've established that this is what happens in Darkon now, so...
My theory is that Darkon's always been, like, the big melting pot domain, that it's the one that, you know, back when Ravenloft is mostly humans, it's like, no, you go to Darkon and it's not mostly humans, it's everybody, it's the
it was like the big dark fantasy one.
Yeah, but that's kind of like doing the melting pot rather than the salad bowl. It's that you go to Darkon and theoretically it has all of this diversity, but it doesn't really. It's just this you know, mess. And I don't think that's what they were going
Yeah, I was
for,
about to
because
say,
that's
like,
much more of like a 21st century
as
idea.
with you and La Llorona, I
Yes.
think that's like way more credit. That's like that's a way more like cool high concept idea than we would necessarily see.
If it were the 2010s, I'd believe it, but I don't think that's the thing that was on people's minds in the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah.
But anyway, so that's if you're playing around with the idea of like memory loss and everything. And again, we had the plot hook of maybe the Monica Rambeau is a car god agent who's gone in and lost her memory, and so this is a thing that Aslan would know all about. And he would really be interested in not having anybody do this to his people. You could actually have it be very logical that she went, like, that Westview kind of manifested, especially if you're doing kind of a floating Westview, that Westview manifested in Darkon if there was sort of the pre-existing memory thing. That she could sort of, like, piggyback on the pre-existing memory spell effect. And just kind of, hack it as opposed to having to start from scratch. Yeah. Because in Darkon, the idea is that there's, like, this book, and as soon as you go into Darkon, the book starts writing itself, and it starts writing your entire, like, life story in the book, and when it finishes writing your life story, then it gets rewritten. I believe it's writing the new version of your life story in the book. I could be wrong, though. And when it finishes, it's rewritten. So you could have something like that, where, like, Wanda has her little version of the book that's writing your story. And if you... And that... it's a show Bible. She's got her show Bible. Oh my gosh, it's a show Bible! Yeah, she's got her show Bible. I love it. And that's another way you can protect yourself, is if you go in and tamper with the show Bible. I love that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And it's even got the, like, the supporting character section, and there'll be, like, the name and the physical description, and then, like, the, like, character description. So that when that gets finished, then you're a character. Oh, yeah. If you want to let your PCs just in God mode, then they can go in and, like, be rewriting people in the show Bible. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's only one thing left. Yes, there is. I've been so longly anticipating this. And that is Warlogs. That is Warlogs. So if you're really into kind of the tragedy of Wanda and Vision, but you don't want to do this whole cosmic horror thing, or you don't want to do this whole Westview thing, if doing WandaVision is a little bit too weird for you, but you want to have, like, kind of this tragic villain who is, kind of going through the same psychodrama that Wanda's going through. There was a thing in Van Ricken's Guide to Vampires that was, like, basically for if you have, like, a Strahd-type vampire who wants to create a vampire who's actually, like, their bride or groom rather than completely under their control. That they actually, like, that they believe that they're in love with this person and don't want to have control over them. And it was very, like, taking from Interview with the Vampire of first they drain the bride-to-be/groom-to-be, then they give them their blood. Because it's D&D, the bride-to-be/groom-to-be has to drink for exactly 2 rounds. If you drink for less, it's not complete. If you drink for more, then you risk going insane. And then after that happens, it's like they have a psychic link. So it's kind of like like in Vampire the Masquerade terms, it's almost more like a 2-way blood bond rather than the one being subservient to the other. It's like mutual. And there's a bunch of, like, cool that they're vampires and they're awful, and eventually they fall out of love and make them break up everyone's problem. And there's so much potential. That's good stuff, yeah. But one of the cool potential things here is like, well, wait a minute. It's exactly 2 rounds. So what happens if a band of heavily armed transients comes in and sees this vampire forcing this person to drink from their open vein and kills the vampire after 1 round and leaves this, like, half-transformed person behind. And that's a Warlog. Oh, okay. And it's so great. It's so great because you build this whole adventure of the PCs do this and they're patting themselves on the back because they saved this poor soul. But they've been, like, half turned into a vampire, but not fully. And they have this, like, horrible, obsessive, codependent love with this person who's dead. Ooh, I see. All right, I'm starting to see how we're connecting. And so what ends up happening? It's inspired by Interview with the Vampire, so let's call them Lestat and Lewis. Sure, here. Yeah. So you kill Lestat, and Lewis is half transformed, and Lewis is still, like, madly in love with Lestat and missing Lestat and seeing Lestat everywhere he goes. And then eventually he sees a guy who kind of from the right angle looks like Lestat. And he doesn't have like full vampire powers or anything yet, but he has enough vampire powers that he has some charm and dominate. So he gets this guy and he convinces this guy that he is in fact Lestat. And gets him to act like a Lestat and dress in Lestat's clothes and tries to get him to like do all of Lestat's mannerisms and everything. But it doesn't work. He's not Lestat. And eventually Lewis gets so mad and kills him in a fit of pique. And then goes and finds some other guy who looks kind of like Lestat.
This is good stuff.
Yeah. It's so great.
Darkest timeline.
Darkest timeline, yeah. So if you really liked that whole thing of Wanda, like, killing and rebooting Vision over and over again, but you don't want to do a full WandaVision thing, that's a way that you can hit that tragic horror beat without having a full domain wrapped around it. So, yeah.
That is great stuff. And actually, I have something to add.
Ooh!
Because it occurred to me, we were talking about the problem with the borders, and we had to put in, like, weaknesses, we had to put in vulnerabilities to Wanda's powers in general, but even specifically to her keeping the borders closed, because once again, if Wanda had her druthers, they would be closed 24/7, 365. Like, she wants a closed bubble. That's her whole desire, her deepest desire. And I was thinking, like, all right, what if we did that? And we said something to the effect of, if you let her just close the borders like a normal domain lord, you have to do something really weird. And one of the really weird things that occurred to me, we talked about Carnival. And how Carnival can go into closed borders, right? So, and there is a Carnival, if you remember.
Like the Carnival
in the
Modern Family episode.
Yeah, there's a Carnival.
Yeah.
So that could be a fun. The PCs are going in with Carnival, and then you could even have this wonderful, this is a great interaction, that Wanda isn't expecting a carnival, doesn't want a carnival, but she has to, like, pivot, right? Because in the premise of WandaVision, in the premise of Westview, this is a perfectly fine thing to happen, for a carnival to come into town. So you kind of conclude this sort of neat battle of wits, especially if there's sort of Isolde is like, oh, okay, I don't want to confront her directly because that would be bad for everybody here. So we need to do this kind of chess game of, and that could even be a nice, like, okay, we need to play along. Like, we need to play along. We don't want to push her to a direct confrontation because, once again, that's going to end badly for everybody here. But we can stretch this out as long as possible while we figure out what's going on.
Oh, holy potato. That would be something. And man, Isolde would hate her so much because in the older material, Isolde was an Eladrin, like the celestial Eladrin, so she was chaotic good, and this is the opposite of chaotic good. This is enslaving everyone. Oh, man.
I think the cool thing here is pretty much any other domain, the domain lord can just, like, come in hot, right? Go guns blazing. But, like, no, as much as possible, Wanda's going to be wanting to play along. And even just, she's going to be wanting to maintain her own sort of willful ignorance of pretending this is just another, unexpected thing to happen that they have to do an episode about.
And even, like, again, in the older stuff, because Carnival was Isolde's, like, reality wrinkle pocket domain, there was this idea that if a Darklord did go into Carnival, then Isolde could actually, like, supersede the Darklord and be more powerful than them. But you could say that that's not the case with Wanda because she is so God mode.
Because this is her mind. You are going into her mindscape. This isn't, like, a space, she is the land. Like, she is the land in every determinant of the word is. Not just she's, like, not mystically connected. You're going into her mind.
So you could even have it be that, like, Isolde's actually having to, like, play things differently than she normally does. So, there you go. Because
there's a carnival in WandaVision.
There's a carnival in WandaVision. Listeners, find yourself a man who, etc. I love you too.
So, the last thing I'd like to talk about is the strengths and challenges of running a WandaVision domain. And strengths, it's great.
Oh my gosh!
No, this is so good because
we've been dying to do WandaVision, like, since we came up with the idea of this podcast.
Yeah. And it's so many great flavors that go well together. So you get this fluffy, cozy fantasy. You get to do the cozy fantasy. You get to do the fun sitcom. You get to have very goofy adventures. But there's this just Lynchian rawness. Like, this is going to be just the creepiest thing. It's a horror setting in such an unconventional way.
Yes.
Even for Ravenloft, this is such an unconventional Ravenloft horror domain setting.
Yeah.
But this is, it's a goofy sitcom, goofy cozy fantasy coffee shop. It's also maybe the darkest domain we've ever done.
Yeah.
And it just makes such a perfect combination. And you even get the fun for the sort of goofy coffee shop stuff is you're basically like, you get to do all these MCU cameos because you're kind of, your players are going into an MCU coffee shop fanfic.
They are going into an MCU coffee shop fanfic, you're right.
And then it's the worst.
I love it.
It's a living nightmare. It's just going to be so fun and so dark and so unique, and I love everything about this idea. But there are some challenges.
Much like with our other candidate for our darkest domain we've ever done, Encanto, it might be too dark. This is real dark.
This is real dark, yeah.
So it might be too much. It also, the tone is very specific, and that goes both in terms of like the fun coffee shop tone, and also the darkness. Like the part where you're doing cozy fantasy. Some PCs might love that too much and hate you forever for the darkness. Others might just go in and be murder hobos. This is not a domain to run with your murder hobo party because they're going to go in guns blazing. They're going to be, too much chaos agenting too fast. Yes, Wanda uses chaos magic. However, so you got to have exactly the right party to do this with. You got to strike exactly the right tone. That can be really tricky. And yeah, just so much of the fun here is going to be starting out as a cozy fantasy, and then it eventually becomes wrong. Like, you can do basically starting out with Halloween, but I think it would be so much more fun to start at the beginning.
I wouldn't do that.
No. But again, you gotta have a party that's on board for that. And so again, you know your play group, you know if it'll work. You gotta have exactly the right group. But if you do, holy potatoes!
It's gonna be so good.
Oh, the other I'm going off script here because we don't have it here.
Slide, baby.
But the other challenge is again because we don't have a whole lot mechanically for Wanda. So much of it's playing by ear, like where her omniscience and omnipotence begins and ends. A lot of that's going to be on you as a GM. So you have to be able to trust yourself, both to not like soft pedal your party too much and make Wanda not enough of a threat, and also not to make your party be butt puppets. So that's it's going to take a very deft hand of GM control here. Like
with pretty much all the challenges, it all comes down to this is a tricky balancing act, very deft hand. And that's a challenge, right? Like, if that's you and this is for you, it's going to be the best thing ever. But that's a challenge, and we'd be remiss not to mention it.
Yeah.
So, before we rejoin our narrator and find out what less dark, disturbing, and horrifying
that wouldn't be difficult.
place to go into next, we have a couple of things to say about the next couple of episodes. Because this concludes, I can't believe this, season 2. And
holy potatoes, Tom started his season 3 folder.
My season 3 folder for my notes and stuff.
And that's just amazing,
Wow. And much like we did last year, we are doing something different for summer. Yeah.
We mentioned at the end of Princess Mononoke that, last year we were going on vacation, and so we were test ballooning some various like bonus episode formats that we have gone on to use again. This time we're not doing that, but we're going to be taking advantage of summer from here on out to play around with some things that are not in our usual purview.
Yes, indeed. So this summer, we are going to be having a 3-episode series called Summer Blockbusters. Asterisk, not all blockbusters.
Not all of them are blockbusters, no.
But we're calling Summer Blockbusters, and this is our chance to do live-action Disney movies. There's a lot of really great live-action Disney movies, which we love dearly, and some of them would make excellent Ravenloft domains, and we like to have the chance to do that and not be locked in the animated format. And then next summer we'll have a different series with a different alternative thread to follow. So that's just nice for us because it gives us more options and it gives us a chance to kind of explore some of the ideas we've had about non-animated movies. And then in September we'll be back to a regular old Disney animated movie Ravenloft domain. So bear with us through the summer, and we hope you're able to enjoy this. It's just going to be the same great taste, but a slightly different new flavor.
Yes. And I do want to clarify, actually, since we're this is Marvel May and whatnot, that we're talking about movies that are like actual Disney live-action movies. These aren't Marvel, they're not Star Wars. These are live-action movies that Disney or subsidiaries have released that aren't, under the umbrella of any of the other properties. So
if you want to tell us how excited you are to hear about our doing these Disney live-action movies, or suggest some to do.
And speaking of suggesting things to do, actually, as of this recording, our listener's choice poll has not technically concluded. It's pretty clear which one we're going to do. So, future Rachel's going to come in real quick and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Spirited Away. It's going to be Spirited Away. Spirited Away is winning by a landslide. Yeah. We are going to do Spirited Away.
I'm not super surprised because it's Spirited Away, and I'm happy to revisit it and dig into it because it's Spirited Away.
Yeah, so that's, unless future Rachel comes in and says that Mad Max Fury Road,
a late
came up from behind on the war wagon and, and beat it out. We're going to be doing Spirited Away probably sometime in fall. Yeah.
So if they want to have a reaction to that or any of our other announcements, how can they contact us?
Well, you can email us at wonderfulworldofdarklord@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook or Tumblr at Wonderful World of Darklords. And you can find us on Patreon at Wonderful World of Darklords. No numbers, just Wonderful World of Darklords. That's also where you can get into our Discord, which is full of the coolest people, and you all want to know them.
And they're the ones who suggested Spirited Away.
Yes, they are.
And Mad Max Fury Road.
And Street Fighter, and Glitched in a Dungeon, and a whole bunch of other ones that didn't make the final cut.
And if you like how we took WandaVision and really dug into the inherent horror potential, and that's a very unconventional choice, and actually came up with a pretty good way to do that in D&D in Ravenloft, then I have some horror movie adventures. I've converted horror movies into D&D adventures. They're on DM's Guild. You could do more by this author from the free domain write-up on the show notes, or just search for Tom Kohler. And we also have some guides for running spooky horror things for younger players, which you can also find on DM's Guild.
And then, speaking of spooky things for young people, I have a picture book, Mother Ghost, Nursery Rhymes for Little Monsters. It's exactly what it sounds like. 13 nursery rhymes were written to be about Halloween. I also have on my website, www.rachelkohler.com, links to my various short stories I've written for adults.
Until next time, thank you for listening, and happy gaming.
Parting thoughts. I cannot bring my patron any greater insight into Westview than what I already have. I do not know how Wanda Maximoff gained the power to turn an entire town into her playthings. I do not know why Vision has a measure of free will, or why he allows this situation to continue. I will not, under any circumstances, return to Westview to learn the answers to those questions. Truthfully, I believe the kindest thing for all those who live there would be to burn the entire town to the ground. Even if their souls traveled to some hell, it could only be an improvement. My next destination can only be an improvement as well, despite being a literal prison. Holding a jar of spiced peaches as a mist talisman, I checked to ensure that I carried plenty of water in my supplies. It was important to bring all the water I would need with me, rather than expecting to find it at my destination. After all, there is no lake at Camp Green Lake. Regards, D.
The dreams we hold on to are precious things, my little servant, but even they must eventually die. Maximoff's tenacious dream of a quaint village, trivial concerns as the backdrop to her perfect marriage, is nothing more than her overindulgence, the greatest weapon in her tormentor's arsenal. Hope. Hope that the next time it will be different. That when she resurrects her spouse, it will truly be him. That he will understand her completely and love her as he was meant to. That he will stand by her and live in the perfect world she created for them. At times, I wonder if despair would be kinder. But such a kindness would be lost on Wanda, for she desires denial. Grief drives even the most brilliant minds to the darkest corners of existence. Though my servant is unlikely to forgive Maximoff's actions, after experiencing that grief firsthand, she may come to understand the reasons Maximoff continues her little puppet show. Accounts of these lands, before they're stolen by the mists, are difficult to obtain. However, based on my own knowledge, my servant is incorrect in her assumptions. Maximoff is not grieving an entire village's worth of individuals. She is only grieving the loss of Vision. The rest of the villages are merely the scenery to complete her idyllic life. This would explain why Vision is the one to have some semblance of self. If she had to control him, he would be nothing more than another puppet, and that is not what she desires. She desires him alive and by her side once more. I know not how my servant escaped Maximoff's clutches. Perhaps she did not want her spouse to see the monster she had become, and she merely banished you instead of destroying you. Perhaps she felt my presence and did not wish to make an enemy of me. Regardless, I am of the mind to send less valuable assets into Westview should I desire further research into the realm.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.
And this is, we mentioned last class...
Tom's a teacher, folks.
We mentioned last episode